Thanks. So what I wanted to talk about here is how we use Puppet in Fedora, and specifically in Fedora Infrastructure, which is running the Fedora project itself. Like the build systems, the source control, and everything else that we did. So I wanted to go through what Fedora Infrastructure is. Basically, what our Puppet setup is, it's very, very simple, as you'll see why. Fedora Infrastructure is mostly a volunteer-driven project, which makes it different than most other infrastructure setups in that we can have people come and go and do. And this might be their first experience with Puppet. We'll get to how to keep it simple and sane. I designed this talk to be really interactive, so questions, comments, stop me, please. If I just stand up here and talk for you for 5 minutes, I'm going to bore you and be out of my mind. But we do have time limits, and so I'll be at the Fedora booth more on than off. And that's downstairs, right next to the Red Hat booth. Who am I? I've been a Fedora contributor since 2007 in various capacities. I reinvigorated the bug triage project, which is now part of Fedora QA. And so QA is always very near and dear to my heart. But I'm here to talk about infrastructure, where I've been since 2008. I've also served 2 years on the Fedora board. I served 2 years on the Fedora engineering steering committee, et cetera, et cetera. I live in New York City, best city on the planet. If you've never been, please come. It's great. And I'm originally from St. Louis, where the St. Louis Cardinals have their home, and we're going for 12 rings in 12 rings in 2012. One can hope. Sucks. Jesus. What's Fedora? It's I just looked at distro watch while I was making this presentation, maybe a week or two ago. Fedora was number 4. But we're more than just distro. We're a huge community. We've got 25,000 plus Fedora account holders. We have 125 sponsored members of the infrastructure team, and we'll get into what that means. Actually, now's a good time. So Fedora has a multi-level sponsorship system for contributors, and you start by picking which group you'd be interested in, and trying to get into that group by trying to find people in IRC, whatever. We hang out in pound Fedora Admin on the Freenode. You'll find me there. My nick is JDS 2001. So in the base sysadmin team, which provides no access itself, but is the overarching member for all of our teams, be that sysadmin web, tools, DNS, whatever. There are 125 sponsored members. And in sysadmin main, which is one of the groups I'm in, which basically has access to everything, there are 12 of us. The problem in the volunteer-driven project a lot is that, especially when it comes to something sensitive like system administration, you're not going to know everybody. So the 12 people of system in main do personally know each other, but I don't know a lot of the others. And we'll get into why that's important. We also provide upstream infrastructure for a lot of projects via Fedora Hosted, which is another service that we offer, which does it provides Git hosting as well as a track instance, as well as a number of other services. We actually provide Git SVN, Mercurial, I think, and something else. Oh, Bizarre, because we have one crazy person who likes to use that, but he's pretty important. So Fedora Infrastructure is a little different than a lot of a traditional IT shop, and that in a traditional IT shop, the sysadmin team, which is what we're called, is focused on keeping the lights on, building new servers, making sure the disks don't fill up and stuff like that. In Fedora Infrastructure, we do all of that and more. We write and maintain all of the internet-facing and internally-facing applications that we provide, Bodhi, Koji, all that. We maintain it and deploy it. So it's a lot different than the traditional shop in that way. So we write the app and deploy it at the same time. So what services do we provide? We provide, and it has to be available 24/7, all of our public-facing websites, fedoraproject.org, the wiki, Smolt, which is our hardware profiling system, which is a pain in and of itself, source code management for the project itself, which was transitioned to Git. We provide contributor-focused web apps, FAS, which is the Fedora account system, Bodhi, which is the update system, PackageDB, which manages access to the source code management system. It does a lot of our Git-lite stuff. It's plugged into Git-lite for who has access to what repos, et cetera, and there's others. And last but not least, we provide a build system which builds from source to binary, the entire distribution. The build system is a little bit interesting in that we don't use Puppet for our builders, but we can get into why that is if people are interested. So given all this, we're just pulling our hair out, or at least we would be if it weren't for Puppet. Puppet is the only way we possibly keep sane doing all this. We manually maintain some stuff, like Fedora hosted, for example. We consider the projects that are their data, so we don't have to go make a Puppet change every time we want to add a new hosted project. And there's a dichotomy that we have between configuration and data. Configuration all goes into Puppet, and data is managed externally in some way. So we have dev, staging, prod, just like any reasonable IT organization. We have 165 hosts from what I count in Puppet. It's very dynamic, and dev, or what we used to call public test, is the absolute wild, wild west of things. Stuff goes on there that will basically give anyone access to that. Staging and prod is a little harder. So stock Puppet really didn't do everything that we needed it to do. But at the same time, we don't have any Ruby expertise in the Fedora infrastructure team. We're mostly Python shop. Sorry. So yeah, we're mostly a Python shop. So not being a Ruby shop and using Puppet is actually possible, and extending it. You just have to hack around what functionality isn't there. So the point of a lot of this is to go into what we've done to work around some things. So basic setup, we don't run the Puppet agent. We run via cron. We have a single Git repo for our configurations. For staging and production, we used to have separate repos for staging and production, and what we found is that keeping them in sync was an absolute nightmare. So we did away with that, and we provide just one Git repo. And how we do that, I'll get into later. So some people, it's their first experience with Puppet that are in Fedora infrastructure. I know it was mine, good 4 years ago. So, and since then I've used it other places, but mainly from good experience in Fedora. So we want to prevent people's typos because we'll let any of the 125 people in that sysadmin group commit to our master Puppet repo. So we want to prevent typos and people not understanding Puppet syntax and stuff like that from completely breaking us. This is highly annoying. Sorry. So here's what happens on the bad commit. We have, first of all, our security policy dictates that the Git repo cannot be cloned off-site. So our security policy dictates that you have to do all your work on this one box. And even if you didn't, you'd wind up pushing it back here anyway. So I just committed something horribly bad to our site.pp. I just put random characters after the end of it and tried to push that. And it said, no, sorry, you can't do that. And that is a hook. I believe it came from Puppet Labs really early on, because we are a really early user of Puppet. So this is pretty old. So, but that's one way that we have to do that. Now, what I didn't show here and what I wanted to talk about is what happens if that was actually a successful commit, i.e. it parsed okay. It would then immediately go live because the same hook, I'm sorry, the post-commit hook, I think. The post-commit hook will clone the repo again. It'll do a git pull into the proper place for the Puppet master to look at. So once the commit succeeds, a git pull happens, and your changes are immediately live. Now, we also have you.
Yeah, did you write your own hook, or did you send like Puppet parser validate inside of a git?
We just run Puppet parser validate. Okay. Now, that being said, there is room for improvement there, because obviously Puppet parser validate, you can write perfectly valid code that parses, that is still broken. So, and we've done that. We've had very experienced people do that, and wind up causing my phone to sound like a burglar alarm. Happened just last week. That's where our reporting comes in. We have a script that pulls the YAML from every node and checks it for errors and sends us mail. And we only do that once per node, unless the problem is chronic, in which case we do it once per day. So basically what we do is we check some of the errors using like SHA-1 or something like that, and if it's the same SHA-1 as what we had previously, we don't mail unless it's been 24 hours, and then we'll mail it with a new subject line of chronic issue, so that we don't get spammed every time Puppet runs if there's something that continues to be broken for a few hours. But we will know about it within, if it continues. So some advantages of being agentless are, I've seen horrible Ruby memory leaks, as I'm sure everyone has, not in Fedora Infrastructure, but on another site that I was using, Puppet at. I once saw the Puppet agent taking up 2 gigs of RAM, doing nothing. It's great. But there's more to it than that. We have another host called, we have another repo outside of Puppet called our InfraHost repo, which contains notes and other metadata about hosts. Among them, there's a file in there called run Puppet, and the cron job that runs the agent doesn't run the agent, actually. It runs a wrapper script around the agent that checks, can I wget this file? If not, do not run Puppet. So it's as simple as a get rm to say don't run Puppet. And if you're messing around with host, and then because it's obviously a Git repository, we can tell which hosts are not running Puppet right now. And hopefully that number is 0. So, and I'm obviously more than willing to share exact details if anyone's interested. So we also have a script that says the YAML for this has not been updated in an hour, so go check it out. So it's a little bit of belt and suspenders there, so that no one can maliciously or otherwise disable a host without us knowing. Like I said before, in a volunteer-driven world, simplicity is key. We do not use, and this strikes some people as strange, like Sam here. We do not use an external node classifier. We do not use Foreman. We don't do this because it introduces complexity to the setup, and when you're when you're in a volunteer-driven environment that attempts to cater to everyone and have a very low barrier for entry, you don't want extraneous things like that hindering what they do. So adding hosts is a very manual process, but it's not that hard. You had something? Or no? Okay. So, and our staging environment is just a Puppet environment, and how our single repo model works is most of our Puppet code is split into modules. We probably have about 100 modules, a lot of which we wrote before Puppet Forge existed. Some of them may come from Puppet Forge. And some of them are completely internal simply because no one else has Fedora account system to run, so that's why that's internal. So simplicity is key. So the staging environment on the Puppet Master has a different module path. So it looks in varlib puppet get modules for the production modules, and varlib puppet get modules dash staging. The order is reversed, I'm sorry. So that it will look in staging first, obviously. That's in order so that we can change our staging modules while still having a single branch, and if a module is not defined in module staging, it'll just use the production version of that, which is generally exactly what we want to happen. And we have a procedure to go clean up the module staging directory whenever we release something new, like the Fedora message bus is one service that we're providing so that various applications can consume messages from an AMQP broker. And we've recently released that live, so the modules to do that went from module staging to modules. And as I've referenced, when simplicity doesn't work, get to the rescue with all of our hooks and stuff like that. It generally works. And I've alluded to this before, that in a volunteer world, I don't know everybody who has access to my Puppet repo. So security is key because we can't just go give everybody access to everything. So how do we prevent that? So so I said there's one Puppet Git repo. Wrong, there's two. There's the private repo, which only sysadmin main has access to. It contains exactly one file, which is global definitions of variables like this for passwords. So that not everyone will know the password to our fast database, which is highly sensitive because it has like home addresses of contributors and stuff like that. So it's one file, passwords.pp, that just says FPO password equals blah, whatever it is. And they're all random, don't worry. Our module setup consists of one module per package. So for an RPM package, if we have some configuration to do for it, we will have one module for that. For example, for the Fedora message bus, which I mentioned earlier, it needs an MQP broker. We need to configure that. The QPD has a module. You had something there? No? Distraction? And again, for staging modules, there's module staging that I referred to earlier for moving stuff into production. And if you're doing it in Puppet code that is outside of modules, which is, we're trying to get further and further away from having stuff that's outside of modules, but you can obviously write if statements around Puppet environment staging and do different things there. So we're always watching. Like I mentioned, this is one of our Puppet reports that goes to system in main, and that's looks like I didn't like how LibreOffice cut this off, but it looks like we just couldn't contact something, and that's a common thing. It doesn't much matter. We have common network hiccups because a lot of our stuff goes over a host-to-host VPN, so every host is on the VPN, and because they are not all in one physical location, that's another thing that it's tangential to Puppet, but Fedora Infrastructure gets hosting from a lot of different places. We get hosting from iBiblio, from Colo America, from Server Beach, from Telia over in Germany, BodHost. There's some Rackspace Cloud stuff. So in order to securely communicate, we have a host-to-host VPN of all of these hosts. And we do have the majority of our important hosts are co-located with Red Hat and Phoenix. Contacting infra, we have lots of ways to contact us. You can I didn't mention IRC on there. And the colors sort of suck because LibreOffice decided, oh, I'm going to make these clickable and make them blue. But infrastructure at lists.fedoraproject.org is a public mailing list. Anyone can join. I encourage everybody to. Admin at fedoraproject.org is an alias that goes to the 12 members of system in main. If you have anything private that you need to tell us about or anything, just send us an email there. And fedorahosted.org/Fedora Infrastructure, that's our ticket tracking system. That's a track instance. And generally we'll provide those for anybody who wants it. And also, I don't know why I didn't put this on the slide. I put this slide in late. Pound Fedora Admin on Freenode. Sources for all of our stuff. We have a Git repo on fedorahosted.org. And you can't see this, and I wish you could. These slides will be available, and oops, I just killed the. Oh well. This sucks. Okay. This mouse is just not very good. I just got this yesterday, so bear with me. Or not. pop quiz. How do I get back in the slideshow? Okay, that sucks. There we go. Much better. I wish you could read that. But the slides will be available. I've got the link on the next page that is not blue. Seth Vidal wrote a lot of this stuff, and his personal Git repo is the top one there. That contains stuff like a script called nag once, which is used all over the place to do that MD5 sum checking thing and mailing if it's changed. Our infrastructure Git repo, which is accessible to all of us that can question, that can hold various stuff. Now, a lot of people have asked us about our Puppet modules and whether or not they're publicly available. Well, the answer to that is generally no, but we will make them available on a case-by-case basis because, and the only reason we haven't made the entire repository available is we're concerned that there may be private stuff in there that we haven't weeded out. I mean, we've done a pretty good job, and we know the history contains private stuff. So we don't want to publish the entire thing. Individual modules, I can tar them up and put them in the infrastructure Git repo or whatever if you are interested in any of them. And that's all I had. Questions, comments?